barn was alive with the mingling sounds of anticipation and nervousness as the auction day approached. The air was thick with dust and excitement, a mix that filled Steve's lungs as he stood in the shade of the large oak tree outside his barn, waiting for the first wave of bidders to arrive. He could hear horses whinnying and stamping in their stalls, each sound echoing his own restless thoughts about what lay ahead. Today would determine much more than just the fate of a few horses. It felt like a turning point for his entire ranch. As he wiped the sweat from his brow, Steve looked across the yard where Eleanor Foster busied herself setting up tables draped with checkered cloths. She moved methodically, arranging pamphlets and refreshments while casting glances at him that conveyed both encouragement and concern. "Everything set," Eleanor called over her shoulder, adjusting her straw hat against the harsh sun. "You ready for this?" "I guess so," Steve replied, though doubt gnawed at him like a starving coyote. "I've never done anything like this before." Eleanor stepped closer, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Just remember why you're doing it." Her voice softened slightly. "We need to find good homes for them." He nodded, but couldn't shake off the weight pressing on his chest. Each horse represented not just an animal up for sale, but a fragment of hope. Hope that someone might see beyond their weathered exteriors to discover potential hidden within. As people began to trickle into the yard, murmurs filled the air alongside laughter and excited chatter about which horses might attract bids worthy of their beauty or lineage. But what troubled Steve most was that his heart wasn't entirely in selling any of them, particularly not Hope and Star. His gaze drifted toward Hope's stall, where she stood calm yet vigilant, nuzzling her foal who danced around her legs like a constellation, discovering its place in an unfamiliar sky. Star had grown remarkably since that fateful day when he first took breath among dust and despair, a stunning chestnut coat adorned with those intricate white markings resembling stars themselves. "Look at them," Eleanor remarked softly, observing from beside him as if sensing his inner conflict without needing words. "There's something special there." "They deserve better than some random bidder," Steve muttered more to himself than anyone else. "Then let's make sure they go to someone who appreciates them," she encouraged firmly but gently. Compassion radiated from every syllable. With every passing minute, more bidders arrived. Horse enthusiasts clad in denim jackets or flashy boots examined horses like treasures waiting to be unearthed. Some were seasoned riders looking for strong mounts. Others appeared merely curious about Star's unique markings, drawing them closer, despite whispers of rumors swirling through Silver Creek about a miracle horse birthed under dire circumstances. Lot 21 is next. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the dusty arena, Steve stood beside Eleanor, heart pounding as he surveyed the throng of bidders gathering for the auction. Each tick of time felt like an eternity as they shuffled about, their eager chatter creating a vibrant backdrop to this pivotal moment. He caught glimpses of people dressed in denim jackets and polished boots, some with practiced eyes examining horses like rare gems waiting to be discovered. "Lot 21 is next," came a voice over the loudspeaker, cutting through his swirling thoughts. It was a sharp reminder that Hope and Star were on display now, pawns in a game he hadn't anticipated playing. He turned to Eleanor, who remained steadfast at his side. "They deserve better than some random bidder," he muttered, frustration tightening around his chest like a vice. This wasn't just another horse sale. It was their story, his story, written in every scar and star-marked coat. Eleanor's gaze softened with understanding. "Then, let's make sure they go to someone who appreciates them," she replied, gently but firmly. Her words radiated warmth and strength, bolstering his resolve amidst the chaos unfolding around him. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation as more potential buyers filtered in, a mix of seasoned equestrians looking for robust companions and casual observers drawn by whispers of Silver Creek's miracle horse that had risen from despair to radiance under Steve's care. With each passing minute, Steve found himself stealing glances at Hope and Star stationed nearby, their bodies gleaming in the dappled sunlight filtering through hay-strewn beams above them. Star pranced lightly on spindly legs that seemed to defy his earlier struggles for life. Even now, an effortless grace shone through those extraordinary markings that glimmered against his chestnut coat. A nervous flutter danced in Steve's stomach as he watched hopeful bidders sizing up Star like treasure hunters unearthing artifacts of untold value. The murmurs mixed with laughter and chatter floated toward him like distant music, yet felt utterly dissonant from the significance of what was happening within those stalls. "Look at that one!" an enthusiastic woman exclaimed, pointing toward Star. "Did you see how he moves? And those markings, they're incredible!" Eleanor leaned closer to Steve, whispering urgently so only he could hear her thoughts amid the commotion. "We need someone who sees not just what they can get out of them, but recognizes their true worth." Steve nodded gravely, but couldn't shake off an uncomfortable sensation tightening around his throat. Uncertainty loomed large over him like storm clouds gathering before a tempest. He glanced at Eleanor, her unwavering determination igniting something deep within him. But doubts threatened to surface yet again. Was it right to keep them? Would they ever find true happiness if sold? Eleanor's expression softened, sensing the weight of Steve's indecision without him needing to voice it. "There's something special there," she remarked gently, her eyes lingering on the two horses. "They deserve better than some random bidder," Steve muttered under his breath, grappling with the internal struggle that churned like a storm within him. "Then let's make sure they go to someone who truly appreciates them," she urged, her words imbued with warmth and conviction. As time ticked away, the atmosphere around them buzzed with anticipation as more bidders trickled in, each dressed in denim jackets or polished cowboy boots, scrutinizing horses as if they were precious gems waiting to be unearthed. Some appeared seasoned and ready for strong mounts, while others were mere spectators, enchanted by rumors swirling throughout Silver Creek about a miracle horse born under dire circumstances. "Lot 21 is next," a voice rang out through the crowded area like a bell announcing something significant was about to occur. The audience's murmurs crescendoed as people jostled for a better view of the magnificent creatures housed nearby, creatures whose lives had been irrevocably altered by their shared experiences. Steve felt an uncomfortable knot tighten in his throat. Uncertainty loomed over him like dark clouds before an impending storm. He cast a sidelong glance at Eleanor, whose unwavering determination sparked something deep inside him, a glimmer of hope amidst his doubts. But questions gnawed at him. Was it right to keep Hope and Star? Would they find lasting happiness if sold? The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the barn floor as Steve approached Hope's stall. Her gentle whinnies seemed to resonate within him, urging him forward even as he hesitated. With each passing second spent near Hope and Star, watching them bond together in their little sanctuary, Steve realized just how far they'd come from those harrowing days when he first rescued them from despair. The mare nuzzled against Star with fierce affection, while he playfully kicked up straw in delight. It was clear they belonged together. "Let's load you up," he said softly to Hope, trying to mask the tremor in his voice with tenderness instead. Though she stood tall now, with renewed strength radiating from within her coat, a rich chestnut color that gleamed in the fading sunlight, there was still an undertone of vulnerability that tugged at Steve's heartstrings. He carefully opened the trailer door, instinctively gauging whether both mother and foal would step inside willingly or resist like wild spirits yearning for freedom outside their confines once again. As if sensing his apprehension, Eleanor joined him at the entrance, a steady presence grounding him amid uncertain waters. "Take your time, let them feel secure," she advised softly yet firmly. "Look at that one," an enthusiastic woman exclaimed, her voice cutting through the low hum of chatter as she pointed toward Star. "Did you see how he moves?" Eleanor leaned closer to Steve, her eyes glimmering with urgency as she whispered just loud enough for him to hear amidst the throng of visitors milling around. Steve nodded slowly, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle heavily in his chest, like a storm cloud ready to burst. He glanced at Eleanor. Her steadfast determination sparked something within him, yet doubts loomed like shadows on the horizon. Was it right to keep them? Would selling them lead to happiness, or merely more chaos? As if sensing the turmoil swirling inside him, Hope playfully kicked up straw in delight. Her spirit shone brightly against the backdrop of the barn's rustic interior. She was no longer just a survivor. She had transformed into a mother who embodied strength and grace. "Let's load you up," Steve said gently, trying to maintain calm despite the tremor in his voice. Although Hope stood tall now, vibrant energy radiating from her rich chestnut coat, glistening under the warm light filtering through cracks in the barn, it felt like there was still an underlying fragility that tugged at his heart. He cautiously opened the trailer door, assessing whether both mother and foal would step inside willingly or resist like untamed spirits longing for freedom once again. Hope paused at the threshold, nostrils flaring as she took in familiar scents mingling with new ones from their surroundings. Star remained close by her side, his curious gaze darting between Steve and Eleanor. Sensing Steve's hesitation, Eleanor stepped forward beside him, her presence steadying him as he navigated these uncertain waters. "Take your time. Let them feel secure," she advised softly yet firmly, exuding confidence that helped chase away some of Steve's unease. With every ounce of care he could muster, Steve extended a hand toward Hope. "Come on now," he coaxed gently, while bending slightly down so that he appeared less imposing, a quiet invitation rather than a command. Hope stepped forward cautiously, testing her footing before taking another confident stride towards the trailer's welcoming entrance. Star followed suit without hesitation, his youthful exuberance bubbling over as he pranced playfully beside his mother. "Good girl," Steve murmured soothingly when Hope took another cautious step closer to entering. Each movement seemed deliberate and thoughtful, the bond between them palpable even amidst this momentary rush of activity swirling around their small world. With patience guiding him, he allowed space for both mare and foal to decide when they were ready. No pressure pressed upon their instincts, only trust nurtured over time would guide this journey together. Hope stood at the edge of the trailer, her ears flicking back and forth as she surveyed the space before her. The scent of fresh hay mingled with the faint aroma of warm metal, creating a comforting backdrop that both intrigued and soothed her. Steve crouched low, his heart racing, and spoke softly to her, letting his voice wrap around them like a gentle breeze. "You can do this," he encouraged, watching as her dark eyes darted towards him. Eleanor remained by his side, radiating a quiet strength that steadied Steve amidst the charged atmosphere. "Just give them time," she advised, her tone soothing but firm, an anchor in this moment where every second felt stretched thin with anticipation. Together, they watched as Hope shifted slightly on her hooves, taking tentative steps forward while Star remained close to her side, still brimming with youthful curiosity. "Go ahead," he urged gently. "It's safe." The mare hesitated, but then took another step into the trailer's welcoming entrance. There was an unmistakable grace in how she moved. Star pranced beside her, full of life and innocence that contrasted with his mother's cautious approach, a reminder of everything they had overcome together. Steve held his breath as Hope paused just within the threshold, her chestnut coat shimmering under the dying light as she turned to give Star an encouraging nudge with her muzzle. The foal answered eagerly, stepping closer to explore this new space without any hint of hesitation. It was a moment filled with warmth, their connection deepening even more as they stepped into what would be their shared home for the foreseeable future. "Good girl," he murmured again when Hope stepped further inside. Each movement seemed intentional, even in this bustling environment laden with unfamiliar sounds and scents. She exuded a quiet resolve forged from their journey together. But just as it appeared that all was falling into place smoothly, Hope suddenly halted mid-step, the tension returning like an unwelcome shadow over their progress. She arched her neck ever so slightly and let out a low whinny tinged with uncertainty at the sound of creaking metal behind them. "Easy now," Eleanor said softly, while stepping back to keep things calm, her presence reinforcing trust rather than pressure against both mare and foal in this moment poised between fear and adventure. Hope shifted once more, but didn't retreat completely. Instead, she glanced back towards Steve, searching for reassurance in his steady gaze. He offered it without hesitation, a silent promise wrapped in understanding, a bond solidifying day by day through shared struggles. As if sensing its mother's trepidation yet refusing to be held back by doubts born from adversity or fearfulness, Star ventured forth once more, this time confidently stretching out into the trailer's interior until he reached for some hay hanging tantalizingly within reach just beyond Hope's flank. "It's okay," Steve held his breath as Hope paused at the trailer's entrance, her body tense with uncertainty. He could see the flicker of hesitation in her eyes, a mixture of wariness and the instinctual need to protect Star. Every inch of him wanted to rush forward and help her, but he knew that patience was crucial now. It wasn't just about getting them into the trailer, it was about fostering an environment where trust could grow between them. "Just take your time, Hope," he encouraged softly, lowering his stance so that he appeared less threatening, a silent invitation rather than a directive. The desert sun cast long shadows around them, emphasizing the stillness of the moment. Each heartbeat echoed in Steve's ears as he watched intently. Hope cautiously stepped forward, testing her footing on the cool metal ramp before taking another confident stride closer to the enticing interior of the trailer. Star, undeterred by any hesitance from his mother, bounded beside her, his youthful enthusiasm pouring out in playful prances as if to encourage Hope onward. "Good girl," Steve murmured soothingly when she took another small step closer to entering. Every movement seemed calculated and thoughtful, the bond between them palpable amidst this whirlwind of emotion surrounding their little world. He chose to stand back respectfully, allowing both mare and foal space to decide when they were ready for this leap into their next adventure. No pressure lingered over their instincts, only trust nurtured through time would guide this journey together. "Easy now," Eleanor said gently, stepping aside while maintaining an aura of calm, her presence reinforcing trust rather than imposing urgency on either animal during this pivotal moment poised between anxiety and opportunity. Hope shifted once more, yet didn't retreat completely. Instead, she glanced back toward Steve with questions swimming in those soulful eyes, searching for reassurance. As if sensing its mother's trepidation, yet refusing to be restrained by doubts born from adversity or fearfulness, Star surged forth again, this time confidently stretching deep into the inviting interior until he reached for some hay dangling tantalizingly within reach just beyond Hope's flank. "It's okay," Steve reassured again as he watched Hope inch closer, the warmth radiating from her body, mixing with the scent of fresh hay filling their small sanctuary against the vast emptiness outside. She stood there quietly contemplating, before nudging Star slightly forward while keeping herself anchored at the threshold like an anchor holding steady during a stormy sea. Time felt suspended as both creatures exchanged glances filled with unspoken words, their connection deepening even amidst uncertainty, swirling around them like invisible threads binding hearts together tighter than ever before. The sun hung high above, casting long shadows across the barn floor as Steve watched Hope and Star settle into their new routine. Each day brought fresh challenges, but they were met with newfound strength, a resilience born from their shared journey of survival. The barn was filled with an energy that crackled like electricity. Hope's gentle nicker and Star's eager whinnies echoed through the stalls, a symphony of life against the backdrop of uncertainty outside. But soon, murmurs began to circulate beyond the quiet confines of Silver Creek. Some townsfolk expressed skepticism about the miraculous foal that had captured everyone's imagination. Whispers fluttered on the wind like dry leaves, stirring doubt in places where hope had once bloomed. One afternoon, as Steve busied himself with chores in the barn, he caught sight of two figures approaching from the distance, Jim and Nancy Barrett, local ranchers known for their sharp tongues and even sharper opinions. Their expressions were guarded as they made their way toward him, boots crunching on gravel. "Steve," Jim called out before he even reached the gate. There was a weight to his voice that set Steve on edge. "We need to talk." "What about?" Steve asked, wiping his hands on his jeans as he stepped forward to meet them halfway. "It's this horse business," Nancy interjected before her husband could continue. "There are folks saying you're just making up stories about that foal." Steve felt a flicker of anger rise within him at her words. Stories? Did they not see what had happened? But he kept his tone steady, cautious not to escalate things further. "What do you mean?" "They're saying it can't be true," Jim replied sharply, crossing his arms over his chest as if physically warding off any defense Steve might offer. "You find a horse abandoned in the desert and suddenly it's some legendary bloodline? It sounds like fairy tales." Star nudged at Hope's side instinctively, sensing tension in the air, their bond unbroken, despite encroaching doubts swirling around them like dust devils in the desert heat. "I didn't ask for attention or legends," Steve asserted firmly, looking Jim directly in the eye. "I found Hope when she needed saving most, and now she has Star." His voice dropped slightly lower as he gestured toward them both nestled safely inside their stall. "They deserve better than to be talked about like this." Nancy shook her head dismissively, her brows knitting together in disbelief. "You're risking everything here. The ranch is struggling enough without chasing after wild dreams. People are already starting to gossip about your judgment." Something shifted inside him at her words, like an old wound reopening. But beneath that sting lay something deeper: determination. "My judgment isn't up for debate," he replied evenly while keeping emotions steadied under pressure. Echoing vulnerability, tempered by resolve, etched on every line of his weathered face. Hope stirred, her deep brown eyes locking onto Star as he ventured a little further into their shared space. The soft rustle of hay surrounded them like comforting whispers, and the sweet scent filled the barn with warmth, an oasis amid the harshness outside. Steve watched intently, every muscle in his body taut with anticipation as he observed their interaction. Hope's maternal instincts were coming alive as she encouraged her foal to explore, nudging him gently toward the tantalizing flakes of hay just within reach. "Go on, buddy," Steve murmured softly, a swell of pride swelling in his chest at the sight. He had witnessed Hope's transformation from a near wreck into this formidable mother figure. Now she was guiding Star through this new world that awaited him. With cautious curiosity, Star stepped closer to the hay pile. His delicate legs trembled slightly beneath him as he took his first tentative steps beyond the threshold of safety that Hope represented. There was an undeniable connection blossoming between them, a silent conversation spoken in glances and gentle nudges, as Hope maintained her steadfast presence by his side. The days rolled on, each one echoing with new opportunities for bonding and growth. Underneath Steve's patient guidance, training sessions began to take shape. Each morning brought fresh sunlight spilling through the barn's open doors, illuminating their sanctuary while also reminding Steve of how fragile this moment felt. They were all still on this journey together, learning and adapting. "All right, let's see what you've got today," he said one morning as he brushed away loose strands of hay from Star's coat, revealing vibrant hues glistening like polished copper in the light. He could feel hope radiating from both mare and foal. Their strength resonated deeply with him. Star pranced playfully around his stall before halting suddenly to study Steve closely. Their unspoken bond was palpable as he felt drawn toward his human caretaker. "You're so much like your mother already," Steve chuckled under his breath. There was mischief etched into those starry markings. As they moved forward with training, every session presented its own set of challenges. At times, it felt daunting. They faced moments when uncertainty hovered over them like clouds threatening rain. Doubts about whether or not Star would embrace these lessons fully flickered briefly in Steve's mind, but evaporated quickly whenever he saw that spark in Star's eyes igniting. "Just be patient," Nancy had reminded him during one visit when she dropped by to check on progress. "Every horse learns at their own pace." But there were days when things didn't go quite according to plan. A stubbornness often crept into Star's demeanor during drills meant to instill trust and focus. One afternoon, after several unsuccessful attempts at simple lead exercises, left both him and Hope fidgeting anxiously in their stalls while eagerly awaiting release for a short romp outside. "Come on, you can do it." The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the barn as Steve watched Star prance nervously within his stall. His heart quickened, sensing the foe's restlessness. Today had been filled with hope, a new routine meant to foster trust between them, but uncertainty lingered like a storm cloud. "Come on, you can do it," he encouraged, voice steady but tinged with urgency. The weight of expectation hung heavy. He was determined to guide Star through this learning process despite the challenges that often arose unexpectedly. Hope stood nearby, her gentle presence radiating calmness. But even she couldn't ease the tension building inside Steve. With every lead exercise they attempted, it seemed Star's stubborn streak flared up at just the wrong moments, creating a frustrating cycle of trial and error. Each failed attempt chipped away at their progress and tested Steve's patience. As if sensing his frustration, Star fidgeted in place, hooves shifting against straw bedding with an audible crunch that broke the barn's tranquil silence. "You have to trust me," Steve implored softly as he stepped closer, extending a hand towards the foe. "This isn't about speed, it's about connection." But Star only snorted and backed away from him slightly, eyes wide and uncertain, as if questioning whether this was truly where he belonged or what they could accomplish together. It stung more than he'd anticipated, a reminder of how much work lay ahead of them both. That morning had held promise when they began their exercises. Both Hope and Star had seemed receptive to his guidance. Yet now doubt crept into his mind like an unwelcome guest settling in for a long stay. Nancy's earlier words echoed back at him. "People are already starting to gossip about your judgment." Each remark carried weight, the unvoiced concerns of those who cared for him pressing down harder than any physical burden ever could. Were they right? Was he risking everything by pouring so much time into these two horses? "You're not going to quit on me now," he murmured under his breath as he reached out once more toward Star, feeling a flicker of defiance rise within himself. He wouldn't back down, not when they'd come this far together. "Just be patient," Nancy had advised during one visit when she'd stopped by to check on their progress after noticing Star seemed reluctant during training sessions. "Every horse learns at their own pace." Wise words that reverberated in his mind now, reminders that resonated deeply with every fiber of his being, even while frustration bubbled beneath the surface. The next session proved just as tumultuous. Each time he tried coaxing Star forward along the lead line, resistance met him at every turn. The foe would rear back or twist away from contact entirely rather than stepping confidently onto familiar ground beside its mother. Steve pressed on tirelessly, despite mounting frustrations surfacing like waves crashing against rocks, a reminder that growth rarely arrived without struggle or setbacks along life's unpredictable path. Star stood uncertainly in the open paddock, his breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. The autumn sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the ground and illuminating the golden hues of Hope's coat as she grazed nearby. Steve observed from a distance, noting how Star shifted his weight back and forth, caught between curiosity and hesitance. "Come on! You can do it," Steve encouraged, waving a hand to coax Star toward him. His voice was steady, but tinged with anticipation. He wanted so much for them to connect, to understand each other better. But today felt particularly challenging. Every time he stepped closer with the lead line in hand, Star backed away, his bright eyes wide with uncertainty. Frustration bubbled just beneath the surface for Steve as he recalled Nancy's reassuring words about patience. Every horse learns at their own pace. He took a deep breath to ground himself, willing away any impatience that threatened to break through. As he watched Star hesitate again, he noticed how Hope moved closer to her foal's side. Her presence seemed to encourage him, a silent testament that sometimes love could bridge gaps where commands failed. Steve began walking slowly in circles around them, maintaining an easy rhythm while keeping his movements fluid and calm. "It's okay," he whispered soothingly, as though speaking directly to both horses. Hope nickered softly in response, nudging Star gently with her muzzle as if urging him forward. The foe's ears flicked back and forth between his mother and Steve before finally taking a cautious step forward. Hope lowered her head further into view while holding her stance firm. The perfect balance of maternal support combined with gentle encouragement. Star paused mid-step. Confusion crossed his expressive face. Was this human really safe? Did he dare approach? The connection between mother and son pulsed like a vibrant thread weaving through the air surrounding them, binding trust together even when doubt loomed close by. Determined not to let discouragement seep in too deeply, Steve knelt down onto one knee, a humble position that brought him closer to Star's level without encroaching too closely upon his space. "Look at me," he urged softly, while extending an open palm invitingly towards the wary foal. For several heartbeats that felt like an eternity, they remained locked in place, the tension palpable around them, but then something shifted within Star's gaze. Curiosity replaced fear ever so slightly as he took another hesitant step forward toward Steve's outstretched hand, suddenly feeling buoyed by this small breakthrough. Steve allowed hope to bloom within him once more. Their shared journey had never been about speed, but about trust, slowly being built under layers of hesitation. Yet just when things seemed promising again, when progress might finally ignite after countless attempts, Star whirled suddenly away from Steve's reach. As Star twisted away, his hooves striking the ground with an anxious rhythm, Steve felt a surge of frustration bubbling beneath the surface. The gentle summer breeze rustled through the nearby trees, carrying with it an echo of uncertainty that mirrored his own thoughts. Star's refusal to engage left Steve standing alone in the vast pasture, surrounded by the familiar scent of fresh hay and sun-warmed earth, a stark contrast to the turmoil building within him. "Come on, buddy," he coaxed softly, hoping to convey encouragement rather than pressure. Yet every step forward was met with 2 steps back. Star seemed determined to retreat into his own world. Watching from a distance, Hope nickered softly, as if trying to communicate her support for both her son and the man who had saved them. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the pasture as each session blurred into another day filled with mounting challenges. After countless attempts at training, doubts began to gnaw at Steve's resolve. Was he truly equipped to guide this remarkable foal? Was patience enough? Frustration tugged at him like a relentless tide when Eleanor arrived that afternoon. She stood at the fence line, watching intently as Steve struggled once more. "Don't be too hard on him," she called out gently. "Every horse learns at their own pace." Her words struck a chord deep within him. They reminded him that progress wasn't always linear and required understanding instead of force. Steve took a deep breath, attempting to center himself amidst his swirling emotions. He couldn't afford to let despair take root, not now when he was so close to fostering trust between them. With newfound determination igniting in his chest, he approached Star once more, while keeping his posture relaxed and inviting, an open palm extended toward the hesitant foal. The air shifted slightly around them as they locked eyes, a silent standoff brimming with tension. For a few heartbeats that stretched into what felt like eternity, Star remained still, weighing options unknown only to him against instinctive curiosity about this human who had shown nothing but kindness since their paths intertwined. Then, suddenly, something changed within Star. Curiosity flickered in those wide eyes. He took a timid step forward toward Steve's outstretched hand. A spark of hope ignited in Steve's heart. Perhaps today would mark a breakthrough after all. But just as quickly as hope blossomed within him, a sudden noise distracted Star, a bird chirping from somewhere high above. And before Steve could react, Star jerked away abruptly and bolted back into the safety of distance where familiarity lay unchallenged. "No! Come back!" Panic rose like bile in Steve's throat as he watched helplessly while Star galloped off toward Hope, who watched quietly from her patch of grass, a maternal figure offering comfort without judgment even now amid turmoil. Steve rubbed a hand over his face in exasperation. Frustration simmered dangerously close to boiling point again when Eleanor stepped up beside him. The air crackled with tension, a palpable energy swirling around them as Steve stood rooted in place, watching Star dart away. The foal's panic was mirrored in the racing pulse of his own heart. He felt a rush of frustration threatening to overtake him. "No! Come back!" he shouted, but the words slipped into the open space between them, lost against the backdrop of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. Star galloped towards Hope with unsteady legs, his small frame silhouetted against the golden afternoon light. Steve's chest tightened as he witnessed the foal retreating into what had become a sanctuary, the reassuring presence of his mother, a haven from the world beyond. Hope raised her head, nostrils flaring slightly as she regarded Star with gentle understanding. She seemed to embody everything that was nurturing and protective. Her calm demeanor worked like a magnet on Star's frantic spirit. "Steve," Eleanor murmured beside him, her voice low and steady amidst his rising panic. "It's okay. He just needs time." She reached out to rest a hand on his shoulder, grounding him amid the chaos unfolding before them. But even her calming presence couldn't quell the anxiety brewing within Steve. The moment hung heavy in the air, like an impending storm charged with uncertainty. He clenched his fists at his sides, battling against feelings of helplessness that threatened to overwhelm him once again. "I thought we were making progress," he said quietly, almost to himself, an admission steeped in both disappointment and worry. "Building trust isn't linear," Eleanor replied softly but firmly. "It takes patience and persistence." Her eyes flicked toward Star, as if hoping for some sign that they weren't losing ground completely. As if sensing their gaze upon him, Star cautiously approached Hope again, though still keeping several steps between himself and Steve. Each tentative movement spoke volumes. He shifted from one hoof to another before finally settling down beside Hope's comforting bulk, seeking refuge yet again. "I just wish I could break through this barrier," Steve confessed bitterly under his breath while raking fingers through his hair in frustration. It felt like 2 steps forward and one giant leap back every single time they tried connecting with Star. Eleanor nodded knowingly, but remained silent for a moment before speaking up again. "You have made progress. It just might not be visible right now." The warmth of her reassurance seeped into him somewhat, but faltered under weighty doubt creeping back in. A nagging thought that they might never get through to this skittish little soul who had been molded by fear and hardship long before they met. Just then, like a whisper on the wind, Steve sensed an opportunity when he saw how intently Star watched as he knelt down on one knee nearby on soft grass, while extending an open palm invitingly toward the foal once more. A gesture both simple yet profound. Steve knelt on the sun-warmed grass, his heart racing as he extended his palm toward Star once more. The world around him faded, leaving only the quiet rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird. Hope flickered within him, a fragile flame that danced in sync with his growing determination. Perhaps this time would be different. Star's big, expressive eyes locked onto Steve's hand, hesitating yet curious. The foal stood at a distance, her little body tense. But there was a glimmer of something more, perhaps an inkling of trust battling against her instinct to flee. With each gentle movement from Steve, he could feel the weight of both their histories pressing upon them, a shared trauma stitched together by fear and longing. "No need to rush," Eleanor murmured softly beside him. "Just let her come to you when she's ready." Her calm presence anchored Steve amidst the swirling doubts that threatened to drag him under again. He inhaled deeply, allowing himself to relax slightly into the moment while maintaining his focus on Star's every subtle shift. With cautious steps forward, Star took tentative strides closer to him before stopping abruptly as if the ground itself had turned to ice beneath her hooves. Panic surged through Steve. He feared she'd bolt again, but he stayed still, his breath even and steady, encouraging her silently with reassurance rather than words. "Remember how far we've come," Eleanor added quietly, as if reading his thoughts while keeping her gaze fixed on Star, as if sensing Eleanor's words woven into the air like an invisible thread binding them together in this sacred space. Star's ears perked up slightly at the familiar sound of comforting voices instead of mere strangers' chatter, which had filled her past life with uncertainty. Steve resumed kneeling slowly, without breaking eye contact with Star or moving too quickly for fear it would shatter this delicate moment they were forging together. Every inch closer she came felt monumental. Every gesture either held promise or risk, depending on how it unfolded before them. He whispered soft encouragements into the warm breeze. "You're safe now. I won't hurt you." Each word hung gently between them, as though weaving an unbreakable bond filled with care and compassion. Suddenly, another loud rustle erupted nearby. A startled rabbit darting across their path sent both humans and horse alike spiraling back into anxiety. In an instant, Star spun away from Steve in a whirl of dark chestnut fur and white star patterns that seemed so vivid against her shimmering coat, the very markings that set her apart. "Come back!" Steve called out helplessly as she sprinted towards Hope, who remained rooted in placid confidence amid chaos, her maternal instincts ever present even now while watching over her child struggling against unseen fears. Steve knelt on the soft grass, his heart racing as he extended an open palm toward Star. The foal's dark chestnut coat gleamed in the sunlight, accented by those striking white star patterns. He could feel her gaze, a mix of curiosity and trepidation, resting on him as though she were weighing his intentions. "You're safe now," he murmured softly, the words floating gently through the warm breeze between them. "I won't hurt you." But just then, a rustle erupted nearby. A startled rabbit darted across their path, sending both Steve and Star into a whirl of anxiety. In an instant, she bolted away from him, her hooves pounding against the earth as she raced back to Hope. The mare remained calm in contrast to her foal's panic. Her steadfast presence offered comfort amidst the chaos. "Come back," Steve called out helplessly, frustration coursing through him like wildfire as he watched Star retreat to safety behind Hope's protective figure. It was evident that although they had made progress, fear still loomed heavily over this little soul who had faced so much adversity long before meeting them. Eleanor stepped forward, her eyes filled with understanding. "It'll take time," she reassured him gently, while placing a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of solidarity that grounded him amid swirling doubts. With determination rekindled in his heart, Steve shifted his focus back to Star. He observed how she pressed close against Hope, seeking refuge beneath her mother's watchful gaze. Taking a deep breath to steady himself once more, he returned to kneeling position on the ground, but now kept his distance while watching closely for any signs of willingness from Star again. The sun bathed the landscape in golden hues. Birds chirped cheerfully above, as if nature itself conspired to soothe their anxiety-riddled hearts. He whispered sweet nothings into the wind. "You're doing great. Just take your time." Each word hung softly around them, like music meant only for Star's ears, creating an invisible tether stretched taut with care and compassion. Slowly but surely, the foal took tentative steps toward him again after seeming rooted in place moments prior. She paused just shy of reaching out completely, her dark eyes glimmering with uncertainty, yet curious about this gentle human who held hope within his palms. And there it was, that pivotal moment where every ounce of longing fused into one breathtaking possibility. Star took another step closer, until she was almost within reach. "I know you're scared," Steve said quietly, as he could hardly breathe through sheer excitement at what felt like victory lingering on the edge of realization. "Just trust me." His sincerity pierced through layers built by past hardships, a flicker ignited within Star's expressive gaze, the fleeting doubt melting away inch by inch until it vanished altogether when she finally edged forward further into his space. Steve's heart raced as he observed Star hesitantly approach him, each cautious step echoing the silent plea for trust in her dark eyes. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the rhythmic sounds of their breaths mingling with the soft rustle of the wind. It was a fragile moment suspended in time, where hope flickered like a candle against the shadows. "Come on, little one," he murmured gently, his voice barely above a whisper. As if sensing the sincerity behind his tone, Star's ears perked up slightly, reflecting her curiosity despite lingering apprehension. Then came a sudden disturbance. A nearby rustle startled a rabbit that darted across their path. In that instant, panic surged through both mother and child as Star bolted toward Hope, who remained steadfastly calm amid the chaos, a bastion of maternal strength. Steve watched helplessly as she fled from him, longing for that connection they had nearly forged just moments before. "Star, come back!" he called out in desperation as she sprinted away with such grace and speed it left him breathless. But Hope didn't falter. She stood watchful and grounded, embodying serene confidence while radiating unconditional love. Her presence reassured Steve as he took a deep breath to steady himself. For what felt like eternity, Star lingered at the edges of fear and curiosity, the remnants of instinct battling against her growing desire for connection with this gentle man who had already offered so much care. She paused just shy of reaching him again, those beautiful dark eyes shimmering with uncertainty, yet hinting at burgeoning trust as they studied Steve intently. "I know you're scared," Steve spoke softly once more, urgency lacing his voice but gentleness overriding it all. He could hardly contain his excitement. Every word felt monumental, an almost tangible victory waiting to unfold before them. "Just trust me." His sincerity appeared to penetrate through layers built by past hardships, a flicker ignited within Star's expressive gaze, doubt fading inch by inch until finally dissipating altogether when she edged closer into his space once more. As if propelled by an invisible force drawing them together amidst vulnerability and hope alike, Steve held out his hand slowly, offering not just comfort, but partnership filled with promise. In an astonishing act of bravery for such a young soul, still learning about this world beyond her mother's embrace, Star stepped forward until she was nearly within reach. The very air crackled with anticipation as Steve continued to murmur sweet encouragements while maintaining eye contact, his heart swelling at this unfolding bond that transcended words or species entirely. He could see her muscles relaxing beneath her shining coat. Even those delicate hooves seemed less hesitant now upon encountering something unfamiliar, yet undeniably inviting. Star's dark eyes shone with a mixture of hesitation and burgeoning curiosity as she edged ever closer to Steve. He remained still, feeling the weight of that moment swell around them like the warm Nevada air. The excitement surged within him as he extended his hand in a gentle gesture of trust, hoping to bridge the invisible gap between their worlds. "Just take your time," he murmured softly, watching her delicate features shift from uncertainty to an eager anticipation. With each cautious step, Star moved into his space, inching forward as if pulled by some invisible thread weaving between their spirits. The atmosphere felt charged with possibilities. The quiet promise of connection hung heavy in the air. As Star finally approached him, Steve's heart raced at this tentative alliance forming before his very eyes. He could see her muscles relaxing beneath her shiny coat. Even her hooves seemed less uncertain upon encountering something so comforting yet unfamiliar. This was not merely a meeting, it was an awakening. A recognition of shared experiences born from hardship and survival. The barn stood silent, except for the soft rustle of hay beneath them and the occasional sound of Hope outside, grazing peacefully in the pasture. Here was a sanctuary where both horse and human sought solace after trials that had tested their resilience. "Hey there," Steve whispered, barely above a breath as he reached out farther still, allowing Star to make her choice without pressure. She responded by nuzzling closer to his palm, warmth radiating from her coat against his skin, a tangible proof of life reclaiming itself after despair. He could hardly contain his joy as she pressed into him with trust, unfurling like petals blooming under a gentle sun, each movement igniting sparks of hope in his chest. In this fragile moment, filled with tenderness and understanding, it felt like they were two souls learning how to fly together after being grounded for far too long. "See? Nothing to worry about," Steve said soothingly, delight flooding through him at how quickly she began to respond, her nose exploring the lines on his palm as if searching for answers only he could give. "You're safe now." Each day unfolded like a new chapter in their story. Each interaction layered with comfort and security, built on patience and care. As days turned into weeks and autumn shifted towards winter's chill, hope flourished alongside Star, both mother and foe, transforming not just physically but emotionally in ways that spoke volumes about healing and second chances. Steve often caught himself marveling at how drastically life had shifted since finding hope lying near death in the desert, a memory now reduced to whispers carried by desert winds rather than burdens weighing heavily on his shoulders. Eleanor became a regular fixture at the ranch during these times. She'd bring fresh supplies or simply share stories that filled the barn with laughter echoing against weathered wood beams, long starved for sound.